When I say we moved so fast, like we moved. It's like we knew we didn't have a lot of time. We moved so fast, like we moved so fast, like.
R.I.P. PnB. He was in the hood, and it got fatal for him. So.
No, the crazy part about it is I was at Roscoe when it happened. So.
He was in there when the shit happened.
Yo, I was in there when it happened. You can't change your life. Because what in the dark must come to the light, sweetheart. It don't matter what you did. It could be 20 years from now.
The setup had started the minute he walked into the restaurant. He's wearing $500,000 in jewelry. There's someone there who spots him, does a fist bump. We see this on the video. He contacts someone else, a father and son team.
Now, most of you are probably...
The sad death of PnB Rock at Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles rocked the hip-hop world in 2022. As most of you are surely aware, but 3 years later, the case is suddenly back in the forefront and is becoming darker than ever after staying out of the public eye. PnB Rock's girlfriend Stephanie had been utterly silent since the tragic day. But now that she is speaking up, everything she is saying is like reopening a wound in the business that they have been trying to hide because of what is happening.
You just got hit with fresh RICO conspiracy charges and now eyes are locked.
There is much more to unpack here, so let's get started right away to give you all some background. Luce Cannon was already on the internet, revealing everything and allegedly putting himself and Big U at the location where PnB was shot. Rewind to September 12, 2022, when PnB and his girlfriend Stephanie pulled up to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles in South Carolina, is when PnB actually lost his life. A masked man entered the restaurant and attempted to rob P in front of everyone. Stephanie described it as a nightmare in which she saw the love of her life defend her by literally throwing her under the table to avoid being hit. And let's face it, no one anticipated what was about to happen. Ross can be a dangerous place, but they were just having fun doing normal couple things.
Along with a female witness, were in this area eating at a restaurant when they are approached by at least one suspect who brandished a firearm and demanded property from the victim.
PnB was shot several times in front of Stephanie and everyone else in the restaurant. And according to her heartfelt Instagram post, it was PnB's final act of love that saved her life. She wrote, "My man saved my life by throwing me under that table. I'm not supposed to be here, but because of him, I am." This was not just a robbery gone wrong, either. The shooter didn't just take the jewelry and leave. Eventually, authorities detained Freddie Lee Trone and his teenage son. According to the story at the time, Trone has sent his 17-year-old son into the restaurant to rob the establishment and steal his jewelry. And the teen was the one who actually pulled the trigger. Prosecutors portrayed this as a father-son plot.
And it was those two that were responsible for the death of PnB.
Ultimately, he was found guilty in August 2024 of first-degree murder, robbery conspiracy, and the whole thing. He was sentenced to 31 years in prison. This was done right, but not so quickly. Although the courts tied everything up with the bell, the streets were telling a different story because even though Trone and his son may have carried it out, it's who may have planned the entire thing that has people talking. That's where Big U and Luce Cannon come in. For those of you who don't know, Big U is a well-known figure in Los Angeles, having been involved in a lot of street politics and being accused of having power behind the scenes to decide who is permitted in the city and who will face consequences if they don't.
Mistake that everybody make when it comes down to checking in is either you're checking in to get set up and get robbed, or you checking in to...
That leads us to the notorious check-in drama. If you're an artist, particularly a rapper, and you're flying into Los Angeles, you expect to check in with a certain local figure. Although it's an unwritten rule, failing to do so can make you a big target. PnB didn't check in, saying in interviews that he didn't think it was necessary to do everything that he didn't follow. Security, and he wasn't going to allow fear to rule his life. He even claimed that his girl didn't feel comfortable wearing her ring in public. He likened the streets of Los Angeles to Grand Theft Auto, and people are really feeling that way. What's even more bizarre is that the very energy he warned about returned to kill him.
You don't have to do that. What is? 100%. Feel me? Like, that should be that, bro. People are targets out here, and especially... Niggas tried me out here a couple times, you feel me? Like, I ain't gonna lie. Shit don't never work. You feel me? I be too on.
That he'd appeared to be easy prey or even disrespectful by failing to check in. And there has been a lot of talk in the streets and online about how Big U and Luce Cannon were upset about it. Then, in early 2024, Luce Cannon appeared on a podcast and began acting very recklessly, essentially implying that he and Big U were present when PnB was hit. What happened, and why were you all there? There are people who, in the same podcast interview, put themselves at the crime site as if it were a casual anecdote. Luce Cannon made additional accusations against Big U, claiming that he was selling guns to gangs, recording serial numbers, and snitching to the police. He even claimed that Big U with law enforcement to report crimes, thereby labeling him a straight informant and a snitch.
Scumbag stuff. He sick the police on Nipsey. He act like, oh, it was just a sting.
However, this is not the only thing. In a subsequent podcast, Luce's own twin brother came out and attempted to retract everything, claimed that her brother was fabricating things for clout and that many of the things he said never happened. However, the problem is that, even if Luce was lying or stretching the truth, why would he place himself and Big U at the scene of an incident? The feds came in with a long list of crimes connected to Big U, including extortion, violence, organized crime, and yes, murder. Although PnB Rock's name wasn't specifically mentioned in the documents, the timing was to ignore when the fans showed up a few months after Luck's interview. Suddenly, all these dots began to connect, with people pulling receipts, rewatching interviews, and saying, wait a minute. But then the voice that we had not heard before appears. Stephanie, PnB Rock's girlfriend, who was present in the restaurant next to him when everything happened, has been holding in a lot of pain and trauma for more than 2 years. And now that there are all these rumors, new charges, and Lucy's messy podcast confession, she can't keep quiet any longer. Her Instagram post was particularly moving because it gave us a whole new look into what happened behind the scenes after PnB was killed, and to make matters worse, it was even more distressing. After witnessing her man die in front of her, Stephanie disclosed that she was treated more like a suspect than a victim. For example, she was dragged from the restaurant, prevented from boarding an ambulance, refused permission to go to the hospital, and subjected to interrogation all night long while she was still in shock and hoped he was still alive. Some even attempted to blame Stephanie, claiming that she was the reason he was hit because she had shared her location on Instagram. But let's face it, even if that post had any significance, it doesn't explain the underlying problem.
There kind of like an implication that maybe she was involved in some way on this?
The implication was she had posted a picture from Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles where this happened.
So the location, she's saying where we are.
Where we are, and she posts a picture of the food, the chicken and the waffles, not of them, not that she's with him.
Not only that, but Stephanie also discussed the kind of man PnB was becoming before he passed away. She said he was locked in, focused on his family, trying to be a better man, and deep into his spiritual journey. She described him as loyal, patient, and full of love. On the last day they spent together, she told him, "I know you, my husband. I know you, my soulmate." In addition, she said she was clinging to hope, thinking he made it, only to have been torn away from her while being held in a room with no answers. And now that he's gone, it's evident that this is much more than a simple heist. It's much more than a senseless street crime. Because of Luce Cannon's comments regarding Big's arrest timing and the inclusion of Stephanie's voice at last, people are beginning to view this situation very differently. To make matters worse, we had to discuss Big U's purported involvement in Nipsey Hussle's death, which has been making the rounds for years. Of course, the official version of events states that Eric Holder pressed the trigger. He is the one incarcerated, But anyone who is well informed would tell you that the drama between Nippy and Big U was far more complex than what was depicted in the media. Am I the only one who feels that this PnB Rock situation is a bit too similar? Things started to go south with Nippy after he allegedly disrespected Big U, and then suddenly he was gone. It was quick and messy, and those who witnessed what transpired behind the scenes have been chatting about it ever since. Now, switch that to PnB Rock and tell me this doesn't sound familiar. PnB arrives in LA, doesn't check in, and is vibing while doing his thing. Then, all of a sudden, he gets set up, leaves, and his jewelry is stolen. The story goes that it was a simple robbery gone wrong, with the idea being that PnB would be informed that there was a way to get his jewelry back after the robbery, and that Big U would be the best person to contact. Someone who has a genuine street connection. The strategy led PnB to believe that all would go well, but there is a cost involved. Since we know who did it, we can retrieve your belongings, but things didn't go as planned at one point. Instead of clean and steal and return swindle, it became deadly, and the streets have been buzzing ever since. Some people think that PnB might have reached for a firearm during the theft, or perhaps the criminals simply panicked.
People. So, we're gonna find the jury, and we're gonna get it because we know all the pawn shops, we know all the people that's gonna melt it down and everything like that. So, as soon as it comes on their table.
And to feed this untidy fire, since his split from Big U, Luce Cannon has been relentlessly revealing everything. The two used to be tight, but everything fell apart, and now Luce is out here calling him Big Useless as he's splattering tea everywhere and dragging his name through the soil.
Literally, he will literally, right, do something, right? He gets caught up or whatever, supposedly.
Rappers are witnessing it all in real time, and although some remain in denial, others say, we've known something wasn't right. And now that Stephanie is speaking up, Luce Cannon is talking wild, and Big U is facing federal charges. This is not just conspiracy talk. This is real life, and what's frightening is that it's making rappers feel even more unsafe because, with everything that's coming out of Luce Cannon's exposing Big U to Stephanie, finally breaking her silence, and now the feds pursuing Big U with that heavy ratio charge, it's obvious that this story is not even close to being finished, and this situation has opened a whole new can of worms about how deeply politics run in LA. System that is allegedly based on intimidation setups and people being kept in check literally. If these new claims are true, then PnB Rock wasn't just a target, he was a warning. So, I have to ask you, do you think that PnB Rock was actually set up by the same people who were supposed to protect him? Is it related to Nipsey Hussle? Was Luce Cannon telling the truth this time, or was he just making up stories to defend Big U? With all of coming out, do you think the truth about Big U and his alleged connections to both Nippy and PnB is ever going to come to light? If so, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Trust me, this next chapter of the story is going to get even messier.